Hello everyone. Tonight's live show with someone from across the pond in the United States. The Theatric Dyspraxic. And we're just gonna add him in here. To this. Hello.
Hello. Hi,
How are you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I guess the lighting's a little bit weird on my end.
Yeah. So you're the Theatric Dyspraxic. So do you want to introduce a bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm from Texas. I basically, I've had dyspraxia my whole life and didn't really realize that I had it until later. And over the years, as I've tried to find some sort of resources, I realized that there really weren't anything, or there really wasn't much, at least in America. So I started doing what would I what started out as a vlog, I guess, a YouTube channel where I just talk about my experiences and I basically just talk about my life and different things. And over time, it expanded into writing a book, starting a blog, where I write about certain things going on in my life. And now I do a podcast, which is called the Theatric Dyspraxic Podcast, which people can find on YouTube if they want to. And basically, with that, I just talk about different things. I do a reading, so if people want me to read some stuff on there, some articles or short stories or poems or something, can be related to dyspraxia or not. And sometimes I have guests on, and I just interview them and we just chat about different things. Usually it's related to dyspraxia, but it doesn't have to be. I could talk to people about pretty much anything. If whenever people want to come on and they have a topic that they want to discuss, then we can talk about it.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, what would you say then led you to sort of building the social media side and the YouTube and the Instagram community?
Well, so I started doing this about like 2 years ago, in 2018, and before that, I really didn't really do much as far as dyspraxia. I mean, I was part of a couple of like Facebook groups, and I talked with some people with dyspraxia, but my experience with trying to get a diagnosis and trying to get assessed for it, or to find resources, um, were kind of struggle. And so I tried to do other things. I tried to just live a regular life, and try to find a job. And I wrote, I wrote a bunch of stuff, wrote a bunch of songs, and worked with musicians on writing songs, and did a lot of theater, just community theater and stuff. And I started to think more and more about how it impacted my life, because just like anything else, it's a part of you, and you just kind of live your everyday existence with it, and you try to just kind of like put it in the background, but things just happen that remind you of what your struggle and what you're up against. So I decided that I had a unique story. I guess it's not that unique compared to other dyspraxics that I've met who have very similar experiences to me, but I still felt like it was unique enough to I wanted to tell my stories and just like talk about life and stuff. And I thought, I saw people do that on YouTube, so I thought that might be an interesting thing to do. And then over time, it moved on to doing a podcast, which I feel like was more my speed, just because I don't have to show my face as much. I could just
Yeah,
record into a mic. But yeah, that's kind of it. Just trying to put my voice out there and just like show that what it's like, and try to communicate with other people who have dyspraxia. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So what would you say? So in terms of dyspraxia, what would you say are your greatest achievements with the condition?
Um, I guess just being able to just do things despite having it, and being able to go through so many years not even realizing what I had, and how severe it was. Like I didn't know that, what it was like during my youth. I wasn't until I was 17. Um, uh, Thank you, Hamza.
Yeah.
That's a calming voice. Thank you. It's it's more of a mundane voice, but no. But I guess the biggest accomplishments are just the fact that I've been able to be productive at all, and that I've been able to, despite everything that I've gone through, and I do feel like I've gone through a lot, even if for some people it may not seem like much. But the fact that I've been able to do so many like plays and stuff, and have people say that that I have some sort of talent
Mm.
for acting and writing, I think that shows. I guess it just shows how much I've been able to sort of overcome sort of my setbacks, and I guess just being able to practice my craft, and be able to develop these skills, despite the fact that it's like the tortoise and the hare. It's like other people are kind of like winning the race, but they kind of slow down because they don't think you're going to catch up, and then you catch up, and then you kind of surpass some people, some of your peers. And I feel like I've done that a little bit with some of the things that I've done. Obviously, I still have my problems, but I work at it. And I think it's just the being able to just keep on going, I guess, and do what you love to do, and not give up just because you things are hard for you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, I've been writing. I started my dyspraxia blog page 3 years ago, I think. So in 2017, I think around the midpoint of middle of 2017, I started my dyspraxia blog page, and I've always loved writing since a young age. I've always found it one of my favorite things to do is writing, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to write articles, sort of earning some income. So I've had support from an organisation who have sort of boosted my confidence. I've had a PA I've had since July,
Oh,
and they've really supported my development in communicating better with other people. And I think that's a huge thing for me personally because um, I'm quite an introverted person. I spend a lot of my time by myself because I find um, it's sort of there's certain situations I don't present too well in, so I sort of bring myself back from those places, and I think writing allows me to articulate myself in a better way.
yeah. Yeah,
So
it's the same with
I'm
me.
grateful to have had the opportunity in writing for sure.
That's great. Yeah, it's kind of the same with me with writing. It's like right now, just talking to people, I generally have a hard time like finding the words to convey what I'm trying to say. But with writing, particularly with my book, I've been working on this book for a bit over a year, about a year and a half, I guess, and it's still a work in progress. But I feel like it kind of cultivates the my expression more than if I were just to talk about it. That's kind of why I feel like the vlog wasn't really that successful, because I was just kind of trying to speak from the heart and just try to talk. And that works in some circles, but I think to truly um, I guess sum up and just perfectly convey how it feels, and what you feel about things, and how you experience things, and your perspective on it. I think writing is just an easier way to do that, or a more, I don't know, I guess it's just a more structured way. And I totally understand what you mean. What kind of stuff do you write?
Um, I kind of write topical things. So I kind of when I see a topic dyspraxia related or I sort of talk about my personal experiences with the condition, really. I also have a mental health page where I discuss different mental health type of things. So I went to my GP. So in 2018, I'd been just in a bad situation, and my GP had told me I have generalized anxiety disorder. So
Mm.
I sort of write about anxiety, depression, and I sort of try to discuss the introverted and extroverted spectrum because that's something I find quite interesting. Having been to an interview for an apprenticeship, we did like a test about our Myers-Briggs personality type, and that was basically the deciding factor, seemingly, on who got the apprenticeship at the end. So I find the introverted and extroverted nature of people quite interesting because
Hmm.
I sort of was playing this game the other day, like trying to guess, who of the people I know in my life would I say are extroverted or introverted on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think I always like to try and write my blogs and become more confident at remaining on a point because sometimes I find it quite easy to wander off topic. And I think in that regard, so Rob is tuned in tonight, the Cambridge Manny, and he's asked, so how do you find multitasking? Do you feel that you can work on two things at the same time?
I always feel like I can, and then I turn out to be wrong. Uh, I don't know why. Like I never seem to learn that lesson of, whenever I try to do something and then do something else at the same time. Uh, and I always just get mixed up and I always, get confused. So no, I'm not really that good at multitasking. I don't think anybody's really great at it, but I think for dyspraxics and for other people, like people have ADHD and stuff, I think they have a hard time doing that in general. Um, I like for instance, I might be trying to talk to somebody while doing something, and either I'm not listening to what they're saying or I'm messing up at what I'm doing while listening to them, Like I don't know, it's just different levels. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's hard for me to stay on point as well. I mean, it's so easy to wander off, and when I have a conversation with somebody, I go off into different tangents, and it's really hard to get back to the point. And I could be having a conversation with somebody for hours, and I'll be thinking like there's something that I want to say. Like there might be an original reason why I'm talking to that person, and then after we're done with the conversation, I'll be like, I didn't even bring up what I was talking to them about in the first place. I didn't
Mhm.
even finish my original point.
Hmm. Yes, I mean, I would say that with multitasking, I mean, I find it quite difficult to read between the lines sometimes. So the other day, I was told to bring downstairs. We have these capsules for washing clothes and stuff in the washing machine. So I was told to bring downstairs these capsules from upstairs, and then I sort of I put I think I put my own washing in the washing machine. I'd seen some things already in there that looked like they were ready to be taken out. So I took the stuff out, put my own things in, and then I was said, "Oh, you were supposed to actually put one of the capsules in with the stuff that was already in there." So because the door of the washing machine was open, I thought that, oh, well, that this stuff is probably ready to come out then and be dried. But I don't know. Sometimes that's a thing that if I'm sort of told one piece of information, I can't then use that piece of information and then take that and think ahead. I have to do something different.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm kind of the same way. It's really hard for us to follow instructions. At least it is for me. Like, somebody will give me a sequence of instructions, and then I always miss a step or do something wrong. It's a tough cycle.
Yes, I think it's how fast things go sometimes. It's sort of we take the steps, we think logically about the steps. We don't just sort of go so fast. We don't cater to that sort of really fast way of doing things. But then it's like the learning styles of I mean, what sort of in school? What sort of way would you say you preferred to learn in school?
Um, well, as far as like what helped me learn more faster, I always worked better in like smaller groups rather than like, classroom settings. I was kind of a social person enough. I mean, I in school I was very shy and quiet, but um, like it wasn't so much the environment that made me uncomfortable. It was just, I mean, I was always self-conscious and stuff. But as far as like actually learning something in school, which is like only 20% of the reason why I was even there, um, I found that if I was working in a smaller group of just a few people, it was easier for me to retain information than if I was like one pupil of like 30 kids. Then it's really easy to fall to the wayside and kind of get stranded when everybody else is kind of, I don't know. I guess there's a lot more pressure, and it's easier to just kind of become more familiar with the curriculum when it's a small group. I remember uh, the only time I ever failed a grade in school was second grade, and I failed second grade, and part of that was because of just things that happened. Like I was put on a medication because they thought I had ADD, so I ended up having these symptoms that kind of screwed me up. So I ended up failing the second grade, and I had to go to summer school for a month. And I found that be, being in a group of just like 8 kids and like the whole school for like a month, and there's nobody else really around, and we're just kind of like focusing on different, on particular things. It was much easier for me to become comfortable learning in that environment than just in regular school, because there's just like so many people. And it's not that I can't be comfortable being around a lot of people. It's just like when you're learning things, that's just easier for me, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make a lot of sense. I mean, in once I got to college, so I was always accustomed to classrooms of 30 children. So in primary school, secondary school, high school, I had, 29 other people in a classroom with me. And then in college, I think the class size was about half that. So I think it was around 15. And it worked a lot better for me. But I think in certain ways that, even then the support is, you know, it was hot and cold. The support that I received in college, there was one learning support assistant I had who was great, who she understood my personality and the things I needed help with. And then in school, the support was just kind of what standard support people would get in a school. Because at that point, I didn't actually realize there was no diagnosis of dyspraxia back then. And I'd actually gone, I think it was just before I'd taken my GCSE exams, I'd searched because I wanted to find out if there was something that wasn't quite right about me or something different. And when I typed in all of my things that I struggled with on Google, it just came up with dyspraxia. So from that point in the September of 2015, I had a educational psychologist who did the test at my house, and she found that I have dyspraxia and then some traits that overlap with autism as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it
So some,
was,
yeah.
yeah, like I think in school, I think the social kind of thing, because I think in school reports, it was always quite sort of some of the things quite surprised me at times that I was seen as popular. I was like, the teachers would kind of use words like popular, and they'd use these terminology to kind of like boost my self-esteem. But then if you saw me in sports, for example, I would always be picked last. So even in dodgeball or anything, I'd always be picked last by the people who were chosen as the team captains. I'd never be picked as someone at the beginning. So
Um,
it is kind of like I don't understand where the teachers think, I'm popular. It's almost like outside of sports, people would say better things. Not really. I think even on the field at lunch times, break times, there wasn't really. I can't really say that I was majorly popular, but I was happy to be more to blend into the background, so to speak,
Right.
because I think in big settings, in big group settings, I don't really thrive in that type of environment. Though I'm sort of happy to sort of conform in a way that if I like the environment, if I feel like I fit in some way, I'll just kind of try my best to get by.
Would you say that you successfully blended into the background? Like it, I know that's what you wanted, but like, was that kind of how it was, or did you seem to stand out in some sort of way?
I think that the I think one of the main issues, like I love to play um it's like English, football. I used to love playing on the field at lunch times, break times, on the ball court or on the field. And they'd never like pass me the ball. I'd always kind of be wanting to get involved. I'd always try and like tackle the opposition and try and win the ball or sort of just get involved. But those who were more confident and sort of played outside of school, they would be the ones who would keep hold of the ball. They wouldn't really pass to someone else who, they viewed as not being the best at sports and stuff. So
Right.
I sort of felt like in certain ways I did stand out but I think that has changed. I think nowadays I'm more confident to look at sports outside of I think so. There's a local sports club in my town, and they actually have a policy where they include people and they try and get people with hidden disabilities involved in sports. So that can be either playing or in a manner that's off the pitch. So talking about how we include more people with dyspraxia or ADHD or autism or any mental health difficulties in sport and make it easier for them to access sport that can help their self-esteem and their confidence.
That's good. Yeah, for me, I think as a kid, I always wanted to stand out in a positive way.
Mm.
I was, I guess, I don't know if it's really hard for me to say if I was like an introvert or an extrovert. I mean, I was kind of both, and I was also kind of neither in a way. I didn't really like my peers that much. I kind of had a little bit of an ego. I kind of like felt like I was smarter than a lot of people around me, and but at the same time, I wanted people's approval and I wanted to fit in. Uh, but I also didn't want to just become just another kid. I wanted to be recognized for like my talents and stuff. That was the big thing for me. I wanted to make people laugh. I wanted to entertain people. I wanted people to be impressed with me. And but as I got older, I started standing out a bit more in a negative way. Like my issues were becoming more like there was a lot of like unwanted attention towards the things that I wasn't good at, like sports and art and things. And I would be like openly mocked by people. I'd be bullied a lot, and people would always talk about me. And as I got older, as I got to be like a preteen or so, I became more aloof and withdrawn, and I didn't really know how to deal with people. So I kind of shifted to being like more introverted and more in my shell, even though that's not really what I wanted. It wasn't that I was comfortable being like that. I really wanted to have like a bunch of friends and be like, real popular and be the kind of person that everyone liked. But I just became so insecure that it was just like hard for me to do that. So I guess it kind of, as I got older, kind of just changed from being, the kid that would kind of just like goof off and want to make people laugh, to being like the quiet kid that everyone was like, oh, what's wrong with him? And then now, of course, I'm trying to be more like what I wanted to be initially. But you can't. It's really hard once you spend so many years being conditioned to doubt yourself. It can be really hard to dig yourself out of that. I don't know if that's
Yes, I
relevant
mean,
to what we were talking about.
yeah, I would say it's definitely relevant. I mean, I'd love to actually. We have a local, literally just down the road from where we are. We have a place which is called the Venture Theatre. So we there would be an opportunity that I'd love to actually take in. I used to love. I mean, I used to go to when I was younger and my parents were both working. I used to go at primary school. I would go to a childminder, and they used to have loads of dressing up stuff. So sometimes we used to have loads of like dressing up costumes, and I used to sort of like quite like the um, that sort of thing. I used to enjoy, and I think drama. When I got to secondary school, the only reason I didn't really portray confidence in drama is because it was almost like I felt stuck that I had these. They were bullies. They were in my drama class. They were in my maths class. They were in like a few other classes, sports as well. And I kind of thought, I want to show some confidence in drama because I love it. I love watching dramatic shows on the TV, and I want to sort of use props and things like this, but I don't want to make myself a laughing stock in a bad way and sort of
Hmm.
try and act confident in front of these people who have been bullies throughout my school experience. So I'd say at this point, again, there's things like art, sport, acting. These are the sorts of things that I'm now becoming more confident because there seems to be kind of a platform to build confidence in that area now that I'm not in the school environment anymore.
Well, as you get older, I think you don't worry about those types of things as much. I feel like when you become an
Yeah.
adult, like as a teenager, everybody's insecure, everybody's self-conscious about everything. And it was hard for me to like pursue theater like in school. Like I really thought like, oh, this isn't like I wanted it to be me, but I kind of thought like this isn't me. Like nobody would expect me to do this. Um, but I wanted to do it because it was truly what I wanted, and I wanted to pursue it. And it kind of changed my reputation a little bit in high school. Not as much as I would have liked, but whenever I did my first like high school production, which was like we performed in front of the whole school pretty much. So all the people that saw me as just like that shy, really quiet, weird kid, they all of a sudden saw me in a totally different light, the spotlight. And and I was the star of that show, and I had like the biggest part, so like I had all the most of the lines, and it was a great experience. And all of a sudden, everybody was in my classes talking about like I didn't know that you could do that. I was like, yeah, I can apparently. And so I kind of became known for being sort of like one of the actors in the school. And my talents were kind of more recognized, and I became more comfortable, breaking out of my shell. But then, that doesn't last for that long, and I ended up going back to being known for being like, weird, quiet, but also, he does theater too. Um, but the more you do it, the more you realize like there's really nothing to be embarrassed of, and if you make a fool of yourself, you can have a sense of humor about it and make fun of yourself. And I think people tend to like when you make fun of yourself, you know, uh, rather than being just super defensive all the time. Hey, Siobhan.
Yes, because hello, Siobhan. Hello. Um, the One of the things for me, like in that regard, is that so as a child, I used to have probably more sensory things than I probably do at this point. So one of my biggest sort of like sensory movement type things was that if I ate ice cream, for example, I'd put my hands over my ears because like, when it was really cold, I'd kind of just like put my hands over my ears because when it goes to my head, and it was like, oh, I've got brain freeze, I need to put my hands over my ears. And my parents always used to find that funny. Um, and then I don't know, I guess like other things, can't really say sensory. Um, there's certain sensory things that I don't find. Some when an ambulance goes past or something, or something like this, and the sirens just pass quite loud. The frequency of sound sometimes can be an irritation, but so there's some sensory things like the fidget cube thing. Like, I do enjoy the fidget cube and Rubik's cubes and that kind of thing. Provide kind of the feedback and um, do you have like any sensory things that sort of give you positive feedback?
Positive.
Yeah.
I always, and it's weird for me to talk about because I don't usually talk about this with people, but since I was a kid, I always like to take things and just kind of just spin them around in my hands. I don't know why, but it always just kind of, I don't know. It kind of centered everything, all the sensory stimuli, just kind of like together. And I can't really explain why it's kind of soothing for me or comfortable for me. But it just is, and it's sort of like the way that I process like sensory information and just things that happen. It's just easier for me to kind of like truly process it by just doing that, taking like one of these objects and just kind of like, visualizing certain things. I don't know why, but it's just one of the positive things. But I realize now, I used to think it was like so weird, but now
Mm.
I kind of realize that everybody has some form of stimming that they do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're like autistic or something, but just regular kind of neurotypical people as well. Like like there's a reason why the fidget spinner craze took off so big
Mm.
a few years
Yeah.
ago, because everybody had some reason why why it made them comfortable.
Yeah.
My problems with sensory stuff has always been more like bright lights and stuff has always
Yeah.
been a big issue with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it till much later, but like probably some of the reasons I struggled in school and why I had a hard time being comfortable is because everywhere you go in school, there's like bright fluorescent lights all around. And it's just like I always did much better in classrooms that were like dimly lit than
Mm.
classrooms that had like, all the fluorescent lights on. And I never really thought about how like that there was a correlation between that, like the kind of lighting influenced how well I did in school or how well I did, socializing with people. Like even whenever I would talk to people more when I was in classrooms that had like dimmer lights and stuff. I could focus more. With bright lights and stuff, like I would get like headaches and I couldn't think
Mm.
properly. Yeah, it was a strange kind of thing. And of course noises kind of do that a little bit, but it's never too much.
Yeah.
Like I get a little
Mm.
bit like annoyed, like I get irritated if I hear like an ambulance or a
Yeah.
police siren go by and it's like super loud and you're just like,
Mm.
but that's it.
Mm.
I don't like freak out or
Yeah.
anything.
I would say that with that kind of sensory thing. So these glasses that I'm wearing, these have reactive lenses in them. So when I'm in the sun, they go to sunglasses. So these were given to me. I think I got these 2 or 3 years ago. Um, and because again, I find it difficult. So the gym that I used to go to, they used to have very dim lights. The lights used to be very low. And then when I go outside, and if it's the daytime, then it's like it takes me quite a few minutes to actually become accustomed again to the really bright sky. And then the gym actually was refurbished and moved upstairs in the leisure centre, and the lights are really bright now in the gym. So it's sort of the contrast is less, but I really hate. So if I'm lying down on one of the benches doing some arm work and my eyes look up, it's so bright. It really sort of puts me off sometimes. Sort of like
Yeah.
I try and get to an area in the gym that's not the bright lights aren't going to affect my vision or anything, or they're not going to affect my experience.
It's kind of strange to me that like such bright lights are so commonplace. Like you would think that more people would be bothered by things like fluorescent lights and stuff.
Yeah.
um, when I'm sure there are much better alternatives, you know. You don't have to have something like, and I don't even know if it's like so much the level of brightness. I mean, that's part of it too, but maybe like the kind of light filter or something. I don't know. But it does seem like, I think that it would be a good idea for schools and stuff to take that into account, you know, to think about that, consider that, like maybe some kids would do better depending on like, you know, the kind of lighting that you have in the classroom. I think some teachers understand that. That could be why, you know, certain teachers I had those kinds of classrooms that were lit by like lamps and stuff rather than like the
Mm.
overhead fluorescent lights. You know, maybe they understood like, oh, it has a positive impact. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
temperature too.
So, so another question I have then would be, so what advice would you give to someone? So if you found if you met somebody who newly found out they have dyspraxia, what sort of advice would you give a person like that?
Um, my advice would be that it's it's better to know and to be sure. You know, it's better to have that knowledge than to not. And I think it's important to know that it doesn't affect your intelligence. It doesn't affect how smart you are. It doesn't make you dumb just because you struggle with certain things. Um, and it doesn't have any indication of what your personality is. Like you're still you. Um, and you know, even though most people around you may not be understanding, there are people who understand what you're going through, and you know, see you as who you are as a person, and not, you know, they can look past your disorder. But it's not the end of the world. Um, and I don't know. I hope that someday we can live in a world where it becomes, or dyspraxia becomes something that people understand more. Like they have
Yeah.
a more of an understanding of what it is, and that it's like a common thing, like dyslexia or something. Like people can say I'm dyslexic, and people will understand. You know, they'll accommodate for those people, and they'll try to provide resources, and they'll just see the person as who they are. Their dyslexia has nothing to do with them, their personhood. Um, but I guess that my advice would just be to try to accept yourself for who you are. Focus on your strengths. Know that there's still things that you can do, and you can still get better even if you struggle with certain things. And also understand that there's some things that you probably just aren't meant to do, you know, to be
Yeah.
capable of. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody has to be good at everything. And, you know, if there's something that you just are unable to do, no matter how hard you try, um, that's okay. You can find a way to work around it. And don't be afraid to explain it to people, even if they don't understand. Um, don't try to hide it. Embrace it.
Mm.
Just be, you know, just be happy with who you are. And, you know, if there's an opportunity to educate somebody about it, then take that opportunity. And you may not get the results that you hope for. You know, the person may still kind of look at you befuddled, but you know, at least you can say that you took the initiative to explain to that person and to try and educate them, and then it's up to them if they want to take it in or not, you know, or dismiss
Yes,
it. And that
absolutely.
happens.
Mm.
It happens all the time. It's happened in every workplace I've worked at, pretty much. You know, people don't care what you have; they just want you to be a good worker. And
Mm.
unfortunately, when you have dyslexia, you know, you're not always able to do that. Also, whenever you start a job, I would say, like, if you're young and you have dyspraxia and you've
Mm.
never worked before, I will say that as far as like your employment, when you start a job, the first month is always the hardest. And
Mm.
then after that, it gets easier. And for most dyspraxics, I would say, depending on the job, but for most jobs, after a while, you do get used to it and you fall into that routine, and you do get better and you're able to become like a good employee. Like, don't ever feel like you
Mm.
can't be a good employee just because you struggle in the beginning. and you might struggle more than most people would in the beginning. But every job that I've had that I've worked more than a month, after I get through those hurdles that are really tough, I sort of became like a good employee. Like I've actually had people want me to become like a manager and stuff, and try to put me in higher positions, and actually say that I was a good employee, even though I wasn't in the first month or so. But yeah, I guess just try to believe in yourself, and you may not be able to do everything that you want to do, but there's still a lot that you can accomplish, and just being able to accomplish something despite having a disability or a disorder or whatever you want to call it is an accomplishment and something to be proud of in itself.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, I think at this point, I mean, I have a more of a depth of understanding of what my strong points are of dyspraxia, because I think before, so last year I had an assessment for what my strong points really are, because after I'd passed my GCSE exams, I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do long term or as a career. And I sort of, I had a very short period of employment in a supermarket as like a product promoter for seasonal, so for Christmas. Um, so for Christmas 2017, I had 3 days of seasonal product promotion at a supermarket, and then so that had some difficulties, like trying to open a bottle of prosecco, which I'd had no practice at doing this before. I'd had no sort of knowledge of I was supposed to have to do this. Um, I then My next employment was in a school, and it started better than it finished. Like, I mean, it was like at the start I felt like I was, it was something that I was getting by. I was learning, I think, in terms of the interaction, how to have a balance of how to interact with the younger
Learning.
generation. But that was that. In the end, it's sort of, I don't understand why it became more difficult. It's almost as if the role I had, took on some new aspects, and I was not prepared for this. I think the big thing for me is clarity, that I need to hear about things in advance of, if my role changes, if something like this happens, then I either need a mentor. I mean, a mentor would be the best case scenario for me, and having a colleague who acts like a mentor, or I could just
Kind
get
of
told
gather
things,
you,
yeah, in advance, because it gives me time to prepare, and then I can actually really thrive in a setting rather than being like feeling sort of under attack, like my boundaries have been broken, and it takes me a long time to sort of trust again and find the right setting. But what my sort of strong points are leading me more towards now is finding long-term employment in data or statistics or that kind of, because I enjoy creating databases on my laptop, to do with sports. So my favorite sports, so English football, hockey. I love the NHL and in America and Canada. So I love to create databases and compare sports people, and all their numbers, and even about different things other than sport. I like to do things relating to music, um, and things like this. Data and statistics are something that I've been told I'm quite good at. Attention to detail, and these sort of things that kind of surround each other in a broad circle of skills, I guess.
I think that just goes to show that no two dyspraxics are the same, because I would not be good at any of that stuff. But I think that's the interesting thing about dyspraxics is everyone that I meet has their different skill sets. We all have something that we are good at that maybe others or some others like may not gravitate towards as much. Like with me in acting, a lot of dyspraxics, they may not even consider the idea of wanting to perform, because there's so many reasons why acting is such a daunting field for a dyspraxic. There's a lot of things a lot of roadblocks for a dyspraxic, but I guess if it's just something that you're interested in, you can be good at it. As far as what you were saying about working in a field and having something kind of just be kind of thrown your way, and not having the time to prepare for it, I think that's something that we can all relate to,
Yeah.
because the paradox, for me anyway, with like, I'm not a big fan of having like too much routine, just because then everything feels like every day's the same and it's mundane. And I like to have, like, I'm kind of an adventurous person. I like to have different experiences and stuff. But when it comes to like a job, it's not so much that I want the routine. It's like I need it,
Mm.
because that's how you are able to become successful at a job. At least, is that you do it over and over again and get used to it. And that's why it's hard whenever you start a job, because whenever you start, you're not used to it. You have to learn everything. You have to learn how to do it. But then once you get into that rhythm of it, and everything's kind of in sync, and you do it day after day, you just get used to it, and it just becomes, just a force of habit. But then all of a sudden, somebody asks you to do something. They give you a task that you've never done before, and you're expected to just do it. That's a nightmare that we always have to live.
Yes, I mean, I think that it's almost, I think, on the part of the, whether it's a manager or whoever it is, it's like they expect someone to do something, even, so this job that I did have, it was based on having, this job would be like in a school, the equivalent of someone who would not have the most, the broadest scale of qualifications. So I'd be able to do this job without having degrees or university type of qualifications. Um, and it's like teachers and, even, maybe, high level teaching assistants and these types of people will be a lot more qualified and they'll have a lot more knowledge and understanding. you know, some of it, I kind of think, well, my understanding is different. It doesn't sort of make it any worse than, a teacher's psychological understanding of what a child goes through. Having a disability like dyspraxia, that sort of gives me a sense of relatability to children. I mean, I've met children who have dyspraxia or maybe have autism or something like this. And it's kind
Mm.
of like, well, in that sense, I can relate to them. I kind of probably understand more about what they go through than a teacher, even if they might have studied, some, journals and, psychology things. People can read online, or, go through. I mean, I'm quite fond of looking through different psychology channels on YouTube. And it's, people can do this and learn in these ways rather than having to sort of, read something that a university graduate might have read. And of course, that I don't profess to say that, their qualifications are worse than my understanding. I'd say that, they obviously have a different array of skills and knowledge. And
Their
obviously
resources
on that
are
set,
different,
yeah, the
and
kind of resources, yeah,
they might pull
mm,
something, like they might have a degree, but maybe that there's stuff that they don't teach in their textbooks or something. I mean, who knows
yeah,
what their curriculum they had to go through to get that degree. There may have been something that was left out, that um, because psychology is such a complex thing. If you don't really understand it beyond an academic standpoint, how much can you understand it? I don't know. I think it's debatable.
yes, it definitely is debatable. So I think it's almost like, so some people might be viewed. I know that there was instances where, a child might be viewed as being bossy or being, such words like this, but really they might not be being, sort of bossy. They might just be more confident, and they might sort of know what they want to do. And then it's about them understanding as well that if they're trying to make a friend, that the friend might be quieter. They might sort of be a bit more open-minded and not want to do one set thing like for a certain amount of time. They want to just do lots of different things within an hour or half an hour. And, people that might be viewed as bossy, sort of, I think sometimes that's the wrong word to use for those people. And,
Yeah.
it can sort of fuel, bad relationships between or friendships between a child. And it's sort of like a false sense of there's like a problem when it's sort of a problem being made out of not much at all. And it's almost like something else to focus on when, other things are, high in the sky or something. I don't.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
whenever you just call somebody like bossy, it's, it makes it seem like that whole trait is just a negative thing, and you need to just like, you need to focus. What you should do is you should focus on the quality of that, which is, they're assertive, and that can be a good thing, but it can have negative connotations. So take that quality, don't call them bossy, but say that they're assertive, and nurture that quality to be something more constructive, so that the person isn't just like, trying to be bossy, but, like they're a leader and I don't know.
Yeah. I think you're right though. I think that's something that I guess we sort of learn, and I guess those in the professions learn over time. But I'd definitely say that I think the aspect of clarity and what we have over here is we have something called access to work. So I've now understood that. So I've met a careers coach. I've had six sessions with a career coach, and she said to me that I'm eligible for this access to work grant, which will get me support in. So when I'm in full-time work in the future, I will be eligible to have a sort of workplace coach. It will almost be like the middle person between me and my boss, or, will help smooth the interactions between me and colleagues or managers. And it would be quite helpful to have that person, who will be able to help me to be more confident in the workplace in the future.
Yes. It's hard to find that.
Do you have anything like that in America, that sort of workplace support?
Not that I know of. The only thing that I know is that I think that companies, at least certain companies, have to be willing to hire people who have like disabilities, and there's certain laws that they have, like our disability laws being, if somebody has a disability, they can only work a certain amount of hours and have certain accommodations and stuff. But really, honestly, there's really not much as far as that, and I can't really speak too much because there is nothing like that for dyspraxia. I can tell you that there's nothing like dyspraxia doesn't fall in line with any of it, because dyspraxia in the United States is just so there's just so little understanding of it that I don't think it's considered like a disability. So I don't think it would fall under the category of being able to have reasonable accommodations, and I don't think you could qualify for like disability payments and stuff. I've worked with people who do have other disabilities. Some I don't really know what the disability was. I just know they had a disability. And then I've worked with some people who had like, autism and stuff. But as far as I know, there was no change as far as the setup. There were no like resources that they could go to make the job easier for them. They pretty much had the same expectations placed on them as everybody else. But with like, and it's kind of sad watching them struggle in that way, because, over here it's kind of like if you have you should like. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. Over here, it's the attitude that people seem to have as far as employers is we're only going to hire people if they can do the job. Otherwise, what's the point? If they can't do the job to the way that everybody else that's expected of them, then what's the point of even hiring them? That's kind of the way that the views, it seems. So like, anybody that has a disability, myself included, even though what I have is not considered a disability in the United States, nobody's ever like tried to help me or allow me to get by without having to do certain aspects of the job. I pretty much just had to suffer through it, and that's why it's always been really hard for me to sustain a job because
Yeah.
I could never be comfortable with any kind of work because there's no system in place to help people like me who will struggle and who have issues with certain parts of the job. I've refused to do certain tasks because I know I can't, and that will lead to a lot of contention between people that I work with in management. And I've been threatened with being fired for doing that before, but I've become more assertive in that way now than ever before, and like I've butted heads with people in workplaces, especially the last job I had. I did nothing but butt heads with people pretty much because they were not willing to do anything to help me. They kind of treated me poorly because of what I was struggling with, and would do nothing about it. So I made a lot of enemies, but I don't mean to, but it's just kind of the way
Yeah.
it is.
I
If you don't let
totally
people walk
understand.
all over you.
Yeah, because I think that your attitude towards it is actually quite right. I think that is quite alarming what you say there, that you don't have the sort of the platform of support, the mechanisms to support people like that. I mean, I would say that really, from a mental health standpoint, I think respecting the boundaries of if they said to you, like the job, this is what it entails, or this is what will be involved in this job in the future, then you sort of like get a picture of, things you could potentially practice if you had that kind of stance to practice to try at getting a bit better at those things. But then if you practice however much and you still, it's a bit like, again, the analogy of a fish climbing a tree. You can't tell a fish to practice climbing a tree because a fish does not have arms.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are things you physically just can't, however much you practice, you just can't do to a good standard. And if they tell you this, then you may apply for maybe a different job or a different role. And then it makes interactions so much easier. And I think that this is sort of like on a mental health standpoint, it's sort of the fact that these types of people who sort of the managers or the people at the top who don't sort of respect people like the boundaries and giving you that platform to actually achieve good things in a workplace. So I think it is sort of paramount to success to have the sort of platform of support in order to sort of help. I think it's based on situation because other people who I've spoken to with dyspraxia would say that it's based on situation. So they might not need support every minute of the day in their work, but when they need support, they can access that.
Right.
So
sorry, you're glitching out a little bit.
That's okay. But I think it is important that there is the support there to access as and when you need it. Because I think for me, I wouldn't want to be somewhere where I'd need support all day long, where I might just need a half an hour meeting like once a week or something, or some kind of support like that, where I can then go away and use that support to my advantage, and where I don't feel like my boundaries are under threat, or where I have to sort of retreat back to my sort of introverted shell.
Yeah. I again, I'm not really well versed on how they treat people who have disabilities that are recognized in the United States, because my experience, because of the the way the attitudes towards dyspraxia in the United States, which is pretty much just bafflement, just like complete ignorance. That's pretty much everybody just has. Um, because of that, uh, I pretty much have to be treated the same as
Mm.
anybody else, despite everything. And people, because of that, people, they're not understanding about it. So if I screw up, if I make mistakes, then people don't, they're not understanding as much as they would be towards somebody who, say they have autism or something. Even then, though, I've worked with people who have autism, and I've seen people kind of treat them like crap, uh,
Mm.
and yell at them and stuff. It's like, well, the dude has autism, like, cut him some slack. Um, but I don't really know exactly the experience because I haven't lived with that, because I don't know what it's like to get disability and to live through like the you know experiencing disability laws and stuff. I think there's probably a difference between like whether you live in a city or if you live in like a
Mm.
town. I've never lived in the city. I don't know if things would be different if I did live in the city. Um, but I would like to see one, obviously, and I mean, this is just kind of goes without saying, but I would like to see people recognize dyspraxia for what it is and actually recognize it as something that people have and learn about it. But I would also like to see more of a system in place that helps people with disabilities to find the right job for them, a job that's comfortable for them, rather than just like, okay, go on Indeed.com or go try and find any kind of job that is available, that you can get, even if it's a job that you are totally ill-suited for. I mean, I've had so many jobs where I was like, I'm not right for this job, and this job is not right for me. But it's all that's available. It's all that I can do. I have no choice but to try and find that any kind of job that is available, even if I'm terrible at it. And it was really sad for me, and this is just a personal thing, but I know what I could excel at. Like there's only one kind of job that I would really be good at, and that's something that has to do with the performing arts or with writing. Those are the only two things that like I know that I could actually excel. But I can't find opportunities like that. I can't really find paying jobs to, where you can make that kind of income doing that sort of thing. Maybe someday, I don't know, but unfortunately, it's really tough whenever you find something that you are good at and something that you are very capable at doing, but you have no choice but to work jobs that you aren't good at and that you
Mm.
aren't suited for, and it's really tough, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely understand and I think the sort of the idea that people have to sort of do. I think the idea over here, people go off to university, and this is sort of a classic example of someone I used to know who he got a degree in forensic science, and you think like you could get some really interesting kind of careers from that, but he ended up sort of working behind a desk in a bank, and it's kind of like
Mm.
you work so hard to get somewhere, or even if you have entry level type qualifications and you want to work your way up from, you want to see a structure where you can work from being an entry level type employee to then sort of developing more skills to maybe going on a course, um, gaining some kind of certificate, and then maybe in the future become a project manager or something like this. I mean, I know that the sort of setting that I would like to be employed in, I think would be somewhere where I work as part of it. It's difficult to explain, but I've heard people sort of try and describe it like you work as part of a team, but everything that you do independently. So I would work alone, but everything that I can do, I present to a team of people. who can then take my information and do what they need to do with it, and then I
So
can
it's
go
kind
and
of like
do.
you're passing it along to
Yeah,
different people. Like you're part of a team, but then it's like, okay, you have one particular aspect of the project, kind of like an animation or something. There's like the
yeah,
layout people, and then they move it on to the in between. And yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah. So I think that would be the sort of environment that I would be able to present well in, and I think that would suit me in terms of, I think, mental health wise. I think I'd be able to be myself in that type of environment, and I think it would suit my skills, and I think that's something that I think I would definitely advise people with dyspraxia, if they understand what their strengths are. I think to sort of do everything they can to look for an employment type that suits what they're strong at, and also what would fit in with their boundaries, their mental health. Maintaining good mental health, and you know having a job that makes them feel fulfilled.
hmm Well, that's one of the reasons why I do sort of what I do, kind of put myself
Mm.
out there and things like that. Um, because I mean, obviously, the main reason is to try and you know uh, spread awareness for dyspraxia, but also because I want to kind of show people my skills and kind of show them what I'm about, and maybe if you build some kind of notoriety, an opportunity can come. I don't know. Um, like maybe somebody will see one of my videos and they'll like the way I read something, or that like they'll like the way that I do something, and they might want to hire me for some kind of gig or something. They might want me to do some kind of voiceover type stuff. I mean, I've had people tell me that I have like a good voice, which I don't know about that, but I've had people say that. And it's like, well, that's kind of what I want to do, is to do voices and to do voiceovers, narration, or audiobooks, voice acting kind of stuff. I mean, that's always been a big interest of mine. Um, but the hardest part for anybody is just finding that opportunity. And it's like people will spend 4 years at a university, spend thousands and thousands of dollars, and they'll get a degree, and then they end up having to work some kind of like retail job or something because they can't find jobs in their field. And it's tough. It's a tough world we
Yeah,
live in, where that's the reality of the human experience. And I wish there were just ways that people can have the opportunity to do what they're good at and what they want to do and what would make them happy. Um,
mm.
but I don't know if we can live in a world like that.
Well, I hope so at some point. It's been a fantastic discussion today. Thank you for coming on to the discussion.
It was very productive. I was happy to be on. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very
And
much. So we'll,
if you
we'll
want
have to do this again at some point.
absolutely. If you want to, and people who watch this, if you want to subscribe to my podcast, it's called the Theatric Dyspraxic Podcast. Be sure to give me a like and subscribe. It would really help out. And if you want me to read something, or you want to come on as a guest, please feel free to contact me on Instagram or Facebook or anywhere. Just let me know. And
Yeah,
thank you very
go
much.
and check all that out, guys. Thank you. Right,
Thank
bye.
you.